People, alright, so I'd been asked about this. I thought, look, let me shed some light. This is, those of you that don't know, to do with the verse in Surah Ma'idah. I believe it's verse 31, speaking about the two sons of Adam. Now, Allah doesn't mention who they are, but Abel and Cain, the classic story that you have right there, and it's followed by Cain murdering Abel. And so Allah mentions, A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim, Watlu alayhim naba ibn Adam bil haqq, and narrate unto them the story of the two sons of Adam, rightfully so. إذ قربا قربانا فتقبل من أحدهما ولم يتقبل من الآخر. When they both offered a sacrifice, but it was accepted from one. Now it's interesting that here even Allah uses the word tuqbila in the what is the passive sense, that it was accepted, not saying that we accepted it, even though that's obviously the understanding here that Allah accepts it. But it's interesting that what did acceptance mean? They were obviously associating a meaning with it, but that acceptance would have been some kind of ritual that they would have come up with. You understand? So they both do something, and then whether one of them, this happens to it, one of them floats, the other sinks, or one this happens, one that happens. You see, they would have been meanings that they would be naturally associating. Obviously, ultimately, Allah is, the ultimate planner of things in that sense. So, but it's interesting that Allah mentions فَتُقُبِّلَ وَلَمْ يُتَقَبَّلْ مِنَ الْآخَرِ قَالَ لَأَقْتُلَنَّكَ. He said, I will kill you. قَالَ إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. He said, God accepts from those who have God consciousness. Now, here he says, لَإِن بَسَطْتَ إِلَيَّ يَدَكْ لِتَقْتُلَنِي مَا أَنَا بِبَاسِطٍ يَدِيَ إِلَيْكَ. He said, look, one of the brothers, he he refuses to take up violence. He says, look, if you extend your hand to me with harm, I will not meet you with harm. So I won't fight back. Inni akhafu Allah Rabbul Alameen. He said that I fear God, that should I be responsible for bloodshed. He says, Inni uridu an tabu'a bi ithmi wa ithmik fatakuna min ashab an-nar wa dhalika jazaa'u adh-dhalimin. He said, I would rather that you take the sin, or you take the responsibility, this crime, if that's what you want to do, and you bear its responsibility, and you will suffer damnation for that. But I'm not going to kill you in return or fight back. Now, فَطَوَّعَتْ لَهُ نَفْسُهُ قَتْلَ أَخِيهِ. So Cain, obviously doesn't mention here, but the general story is it's Cain. He justified to himself murdering his brother, like his self got the better of him. فَقَتَلَهُ, and he killed his brother. فَأَصْبَحَ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ, and he became of those who have lost, or who have suffered loss in this world. Now this part here, it mentions فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ غُرَابًا يَبْحَثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ لِيُرِيَهُ كَيْفَ يُوَارِي سَوْءَةَ أَخِي قال يا ويلتى أعجزت أن أكون مثل هذا الغراب فأواري سوءة أخي فأصبح من النادمين. So here then Allah mentions a crow, a raven comes. Allah says He sends it. Now obviously here, in the sense that Allah is ultimately in control of things, this raven seems to search about or do something with the earth. Okay. Now, liyuriyahu, so Cain can learn from this, or he comes to learn from this event of what this raven is doing, that how to cover up the ugly state of his brother. قال يا ويلتا, he says to himself, he has this internal dialogue, that what have I done? That, he says that can I not be at least like this raven, this crow that you can see here? Could I not at least be like that and cover up the ugly state of my brother? Now, first of all, right, just mentioning here one moment. So just to kind of sum up what's going on, and then I'm going to go into certain insights. You see, this verse mentions that a raven turns up. It's not too clear. The verse is not, it's not totally ambiguous, but it leaves a lot, it leaves room for different interpretation, different readings of what is happening with an overall similarity. Like there's a huge overlap in what's happening, but the detail, there's so much room for interpretation. I don't just mean interpretation, but in how to read it. So it could be read as an example that you read that this raven turns up and it says yabhath, which actually means to kind of search in the earth. So it's doing something to the soil. And it says liyuriyahu. Now, so he may or it may show him. Now we know it may show Cain, but who may show Cain? The raven or God may show Cain? Like who's trying to teach here? In my understanding, this is talking about God. But some people have understood from it the raven. Now, then it mentions the raven is doing this liyuwari sawata akhi, so that he or it may cover the ugly state of his or its brother. So once again, is it that the raven, there was a dead raven there, and this other raven comes and it's doing something, it's observing and it's doing this? Is this in a way so that the raven may cover the other raven? Or is it that Cain learns from this so he may cover his own brother? Once again, because the verb doesn't mention the subject, you could be reading it as the raven, you could be reading it as Cain. Both readings are equally valid. They're not like one is invalid. These are not interpretations, these are readings, how to read the actual verse. Who is it going back to? And you can see here that as I will show you that, look, oh, right, no. Right, no. Right, so Ibn Ashur highlights these differences as well that I've mentioned. By the way, he mentions this, and he highlights that, look, this is you can take either of these meaning. He says, look, either is valid, but it most this so this is the understanding that I'm looking at. Okay, that they've had this fight. He's killed his brother. He's left him in a very ugly state, because it mentions sawata akhi, that this ugly state to look at is called sawa in Arabic, and he's just there. Now, why a raven? I think it's incredibly interesting that Allah mentions this. Some people have understood from this that, oh, Qabil, Cain, was the first person to invent a grave. Prior to this, humans didn't have graves. I don't think that's true, because human beings have been burying their dead for about 100,000 years now. I mean, prior to the cognitive revolution. And there's some thoughts on whether Neanderthals, some may have had some kind of funerals as well. So I don't think it's this. Some ulama have a lot of ulama. You might read this in tafsirs in the past. They said, "Oh, maybe he's the first person to invent a burial." I don't think that was the case at all. And I think the fact that Allah has mentioned a ghurab is very interesting. You see, Corvids, whether it's going to be a crow or um, a raven. Now, ravens are usually slightly larger than crows. These are, you see, these are very fascinating. creatures, incredibly fascinating. Now, in recent times, crows have been associated with negativity, been associated with death or bad news or something, a disaster or something. This is what they've been in recent times associated with. But if you go far back in history, several millennia, you will see that crows were actually associated with life, with life and resurrection and spirit, and it was actually they were seen in a very positive light previously. It is only in the last, 2 centuries, just under, sorry, not centuries, 2 millennia, that you have this kind of negative rep that they start to get. And maybe it's because people freaked out because of them and stuff like this. But generally, they were seen really revered in ancient history. And they seem to also represent an archetypal feature. Now, why? Many people overlook the fact that crows are some of the most intelligent creatures on Earth. I mean, obviously, not human, keeping human beings out of the picture, but as far as animals are concerned, crows are incredibly intelligent. Okay, they can do things like they have abilities such as keeping track of numbers, recognition. They can facial recognition. So humans, we have a certain region in our brain called the FFA, facial fusiform area, which recognizes faces, human faces. But crows are amazing at recognizing human faces. They have unparalleled features. They have been at problem solving, at empathy, at emotions. If I show you, as an example, some facts right here, that this is fascinating. That look, that ravens and crows are from the same family, which is called Corvids, a bit like COVID. But they can spot a cheetah, and this check this for a sense of empathy and justice. It's very fascinating. So you get that not only can they spot the birds, they work together for equal amounts. Now, if they notice another raven taking more than his fair share, they immediately lose trust and won't cooperate with them in the future. That's Now, here's another fun fact. You see, that they use hand gestures to hold up objects to get each other's attention. Aside from primates, they are the only wild animals that can communicate in this way. So just think about that. Check this. For crows are quite similar to humans and visit their aging parents. Wow, that's. I mean, just the thought of that, right? That even after they've left the nest. Now, more fascinating than all of this, people, crows, the concept that crows hold funerals for their dead. Now, what exactly does I know, and that's something which may seem strange, but you'll have so many articles and things on this. But what I'm what does that mean, by the way, when they say crows hold funerals for their dead? Now, it doesn't mean necessarily a funeral the way we understand a funeral, but when crows see a dead crow, one of them will land and they give off this alarm, which calls a bunch of others, and then they stand around this corpse, this dead crow, and they just observe it. They just stand in this kind of silence, just kind of observing it. Sometimes for between 15 to 30 minutes, they'll just stand there. And it's called a mob, okay? And a crowd of crows is called a murder. Which is unfair, really. I mean, people have been unfair to crows. They have the intelligence, by the way. It's been argued of a 6 or 7 year old human child. That's how intelligent they are. And they've done studies nowadays with computers where they have to kind of like tap the screen, and they have to recognize things, and they pass all these tests unbelievably. Um, but what coming back to the funeral thing, they stand around this mob called mobbing. They stand around this dead and just observe. And it's interesting. Scientists still ain't exactly sure why they do this. And one of the reasons is that they learn from this dead crow. They see that is there any reason how it got killed, and they kind of learn from that and pass it on to other crows as well through certain cries. Because there's been experiments where certain researchers have uh, they will go and feed certain crows, so they kind of get them coming to them. Then they will turn up with a particular mask, and they'll put lay down a dead crow, and within minutes the crows will start mobbing. One will land, send off the alarm, others land, and they notice that person with the mask. Now whenever they see that person with the mask, they see that mask, they will send off that alarm. And researchers had made other people wear that mask and walk around, and they will send off the alarm, but not with other masks or with other people. So one theory is that they are learning why this comrade of theirs has fallen. Another reason, which I think is also there, is this sense of empathy. I mean, it's not just me; other researchers have said it, but obviously it's hard to prove these things. But what you just saw about how they visit even their parents after having left the nest, they come back. This sense of empathy that crows have and ravens have, I feel that there is this sense of that empathy. It kind of has this shocking effect on them. And if this were the case, that look, a crow lands by its dead, let's say if this was the Sawata Akhi was in this case, as many Mufassirin say, that there was a dead crow. But you see, Mufassirin said that, oh, maybe two crows came and fought and one killed the other. It doesn't say anything like that. And I doubt that that's what happened. But there may have been a dead crow, and a crow comes and it lands close by and it observes it. Because it says "Yabhathu fil ard," and it kind of seeks out what's happened to this, and then it stands in this kind of like almost like a sorrowful, remorseful stance. Like if you see, you can go on YouTube and watch crows at what they kind of wake or their funeral. It seems really, and sometimes yeah, they can be wild as well. And sometimes they do things like they may even have sex or whatever, copulate with the dead crow. But it's only been reported like 4% of the time. The majority of the time they won't. They'll just observe when they do. And this, you see, what witnessing that in this raven triggers this sense of remorse in Cain, or at least momentary remorse, where he feels that, damn, like, look, here is a bird, and how it stands over, it almost seems to honor and dignify its dead with a bond that is still lasting. And here was I, that, not only have I killed and left him, so in an ugly state. Like how he killed him, it doesn't mention, but it mentions that he's in a horrible, ugly state, bleeding out. He must be maybe torn up, or whether he stabbed him as they would have with those tools and cut him up, or whatever he did. And here's me, just couldn't have a care. And this triggers that sense of remorse for asbaha min al-nadimin. And then he feels that, look, the least I can do is honor him. rather than having scavengers just come and feed off his remains. So it's not that he didn't know what a grave was. He did know what a grave was, but he wasn't interested until he kind of feels this sense of remorse. But it's incredibly interesting that the Quran uses this verse to highlight the role of a crow or a raven. And because even in its archetype, ravens are incredibly powerful. That, it's been argued that men have, because it's only beyond, really, you get certain insects, that things like bees or things that have colonies like ants and termites, who will do things like remove the dead and bury the dead. But that's more so for hygiene purposes because of the colony. But otherwise, to be kind of in a state of shock and almost empathy for their dead is only displayed by crows, corvids. It's displayed by dolphins and elephants mainly. This is not, I mean, you'll get it in primates, but primates because they're so close to humans. But generally in the mammal kingdom, it's not like that. Except with crows. I mean, they're not mammals, but I mean, except with obviously elephants, dolphins, and then crows, or ravens, corvids. So I thought this was definitely worth sharing. Those of you that I did have as well for you, but I may have not. I did have a clip actually. I don't know if it's here. I probably haven't brought it up here, but let me see actually. If it's here, I will. I will bring it up and show it. But it's to do with. Mm, right, no. Right, okay, here's a clip. I have got it here. Let me show. It was just about ravens. I thought, well, that would be interesting just to show you guys um, that the ability of to mimic as well is incredibly fascinating. Um, just here it is. Okay. Ah, यार ये हो क्या रहा है? uh, right, what this one, man? What this one? Why is it not playing it? Oh, there it is. Okay, right, that should work now. If I bring this clip up, now check this out, people. I'll just bring this up here. Can you see them? They have the ability to mimic speech.
I'm alright. You alright? You alright? I'm alright.
Oh,
you
no,
alright?
I don't think you guys can hear it. Right.
Boop
Okay.
boop. She just wants a head kiss.
Right. Oh, I see why.
Wow.
One more.
Wow.
I'll have to. I did want to share that because it was worth. It was. I know what's. I'll share it as a. It doesn't let you. I think with the media, for some reason, It doesn't let the audio come through as clearly. So I'll share it. Where's it gone? Here it is. As a browser thing. Now check this out, people. This is a raven.
You alright? You alright? I'm alright. You alright?
And just check how they can mimic speech.
She just wants a head kiss. Wow. Wow. I've been teaching her so long to do that. That's one of the first times I actually caught that on camera. She's given us a kiss as well.
Are you all right?
What's the matter? What's the matter?
Treasure. Say, are you all right?
What's the matter?
Want to make some mischief, are you?
It's amazing, yeah?
Oh, there. Good girl. And again. Go on then. Sing for us. Go on.
Wow. So that, people, I thought that that's definitely something fascinating. Let's get rid of that. So I thought definitely I'd share my thoughts on it. What is going on here? Source one. Right, so let me just bring up your chats. Yeah, I mean the raven, not crow. Yeah, I mean they're both corvids. They're both from the same kind of family. I mean they are slightly different in species in terms of size and the way their tails are, but they are in essence both equal. They are both incredibly intelligent. So, and they can both mimic speech, human speech, just like how parrots do. They can even mimic sentences, and so y- right. So let's move on, people. Somebody said that's not a raven, you kamina. Acha, tera chacha hai kya? Ah, yo. It's a parrot in blackface. It's not. It's not. They're not parrots. You see, you just don't know. If you just go onto YouTube, type crow mimicking speech, or just crows speaking, and you'll see that they're actually crows and ravens. Right. So, people, let's